this world, silence means survival. The one person who has a hard time being silent is Duane Davis.
Really, at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, if what they're saying is really true, there are no facts to point to Keffe. Not one.
Day one of the trial of Duane Keffe D. Davis, the only man charged with the murder of Tupac Shakur, is in the books. We're going to recap the biggest moments from opening statements, which lay out what we can expect from each side, to the start of witness testimony. This is a case almost 30 years in the making, and it has just begun.
A gold chain that was there one night and gone the next. That's the detail that surfaced in testimony and added another strange layer to a case that had already remained unexplained for decades. Nearly 3 decades after Tupac Shakur was shot on the Las Vegas Strip, the only man ever charged in his death is finally standing trial. His name is Duane Davis. Most people who've followed this case know him by another name, Keffe D. And if you're just catching up, here's the strange part. This case is built heavily around things Davis chose to say in interviews, recorded statements, and his own memoir, years after the fact.
After almost 30 years, day one of the murder trial for the only person ever criminally charged in connection with the killing of Tupac Shakur. Out in Las Vegas, Nevada, Duane Keffe D. Davis is charged with murder with a deadly weapon with the intent to promote, further, or assist a criminal gang. And a jury will have to decide if he is guilty or not guilty. 16-person jury, 10 women, 6 men, 4 of them alternates. The hip-hop icon was gunned down on the streets of Las Vegas back on September 7th, 1996 in a drive-by shooting, and prosecutors alleged that Davis orchestrated this killing. Not that he actually pulled the trigger, but that he facilitated it, that he aided in the commission. So why does the prosecution believe Keffe D did this? What evidence do they claim they have against him? Well, let's go to the opening statements, okay? Which from a legal point of view, I have always said, are some of the most important parts of a trial. They are technically not evidence. It's a preview of what to expect in this case, both from the prosecution and the defense. But I will tell you, there are some statistics and studies out there that will show jurors, even though they aren't supposed to, will decide a case or lean a certain way after opening statements. So, with that in mind, here is Prosecutor Binu Palal laying out the scene, the stage, the context, the case against Davis.
Let's set the scene. September 7th, 1996. Tupac Shakur is in Las Vegas for a Mike Tyson fight. After the fight, in the lobby of the MGM Grand, a confrontation breaks out, caught on hotel surveillance, between Tupac's group and a young man named Orlando Anderson. Anderson is beaten, and Orlando Anderson happens to be Duane Davis's nephew.
On September 7th, 1996, Tupac Shakur came to Las Vegas to attend a Mike Tyson fight. After the fight, Tupac, along with Suge Knight, Trayvon Lane, and other people that were with that group, ran into a person named Orlando Anderson. And Orlando Anderson is the defendant's nephew. And when they encountered Orlando Anderson sitting by himself, they attacked him. That attack was captured on video. During those 2.5 hours, you will learn that the defendant was escalating and planning the retribution for the beating of his beloved nephew. Now, let's be clear. Duane Davis did not pull the trigger. But what he did do was plan the retaliation for the beating of his nephew. You will learn that Duane Davis got the gun. You will learn that he got into a white Cadillac. You will learn when the opportunity presented itself for retribution, Duane Davis made sure that the shooters were armed and ready to execute their revenge.
Prosecutors say what happened over the next 2.5 hours was not a spontaneous act of grief or rage. They say it was a plan. Davis, they allege, secured a gun, got into a white Cadillac with 3 other men, and went looking for the people who'd humiliated his nephew. Later that night, that Cadillac pulled up beside the car carrying Tupac and Death Row Records CEO Suge Knight. Shots were fired. Tupac died a week later. He was 25 years old. Davis has pleaded not guilty. And here's where this case gets unusual. because the prosecution's case relies heavily on Davis's own statements rather than a recovered murder weapon. There is no murder weapon presented in the case, according to the defense. What there is a series of statements attributed to Davis to a federal task force in 2008, to Las Vegas detectives in 2009, on a Beat documentary in 2017, and then, in 2019, in his own published memoir. In those accounts, prosecutors say Davis described getting the gun, getting into that Cadillac, and handing the firearm to the back seat before the shooting.
So now we get into that alleged opportunity and what the prosecution claims Davis did.
Duane Davis hears about this beating. And what you will hear is that in his world, there is no question that a response is required. What we learn is that Duane Davis is upset about the beating of his nephew. And frankly, that's not an unusual response. What's unusual is the next steps Duane Davis takes. Unusual for the normal person, maybe not unusual for in gang culture. Duane Davis decides he is going to organize a retaliation, that this beating cannot go unanswered. Then he runs into a person named Zip Martin. Remember the Zip Martin that was a connection with Bad Boy Entertainment from New York? And Zip Martin tells him that he has a gun and that he can come help him out.
As you just heard, and if you've been following our preview coverage of this trial, this case is largely, if not almost entirely, based on Duane Keffe D. Davis's statements.
Ask yourself something before we go further. If you spend years describing your alleged role in one of the most infamous unsolved murders in American history, how much weight should a jury give those statements? Prosecutors are leaning hard into that pattern. Their argument isn't that Davis pulled the trigger. They say he didn't. They argue that he organized the retaliation, that his anger over his nephew never faded, and that his repeated statements about that night are evidence of his alleged role. In opening statements, the prosecution walked the jury through the sequence: the beating at the MGM Grand, the gun obtained through an associate, the Cadillac, and the Ute turned toward the car carrying Tupac and Knight.
So later, Duane Davis organizes two vehicles to go over to the 662 Club. Before that, he gets the gun from Zip Martin. And in that white Cadillac, before the shooting occurs, Duane Davis explains that the driver is Terrence T. Brown. In the rear driver's side is DeAndre Dre, or Big Dre Smith. In the rear passenger side is Orlando Baby Lane Anderson. And Duane Davis himself, Keffe D, is in the front passenger side. And this is how Duane Davis explains the murder of Tupac Shakur.
And this is Keffe D, Mr. Davis, seemingly explaining himself how this all went down.
They also played portions of Davis's recorded interview, in which he described handing off the weapon because Tupac and Knight were on the other side of the vehicle from him. If that's true, if verified by the jury, it reframes the shooting as something prosecutors say was organized rather than spontaneous. But here's what the defense wants you to sit with instead. There is no murder weapon. The defense says LAPD investigators at one point told Davis they had recovered and matched the gun, but the gun they obtained did not match the weapon used in the killing. The defense also attacked the investigation itself, arguing that crucial information from Davis was not independently verified. That's the defense's whole theory in a sentence. You cannot simply take Davis's words as established fact. And if you think that sounds like a stretch, consider this. Of the 4 men prosecutors say were in that Cadillac, 3 are dead. Davis remains to tell the story. The defense spent much of its opening statement pointing to inconsistencies between Davis's various retellings over the years, including a detail about Tupac allegedly hanging out of the car window that a witness on the scene directly disputes.
So what you hear Duane Davis admit, that as they see Tupac Shakur and Suge Knight driving to Club 662, Duane Davis, along with Terrence Brown, DeAndre Smith, and Orlando Anderson, decide to make a U-turn, confront Tupac Shakur and Suge Knight, Duane Davis has the firearm. It's a firearm he got from Eric Von Zip Martin. And then he passes it to the back. Duane Davis says that if they were on his side, if Tupac Shakur and Suge Knight were on his side of the vehicle, he would have shot them himself. But because they were on the other side, he handed it to DeAndre Smith. DeAndre Smith, according to Duane Davis, did not want to shoot at that time. So Orlando Anderson shot into that car. Duane Davis explains this over and over again.
Here's what makes that issue important. The prosecution relies heavily on Davis's own statements, but the defense wants the jury to question whether those statements are reliable. Witness Ingrid Stokes testified that when she saw Tupac and Suge Knight shortly before the shooting, Tupac was relaxed inside the car. She specifically rejected the idea that Tupac was hanging out of the window or yelling to fans. And that isn't the only question surrounding the investigation. The defense argues that authorities had opportunities to investigate Davis's statements years earlier, but did not charge him in 2009. The defense says that failure matters because, in its view, investigators did not have enough verified evidence at the time to move forward.
Now, there's something key here that the prosecution hits upon. One emotion that allegedly surfaces from Keffe D, which the prosecutor claims shows that he participated in this killing of Tupac Shakur. And that emotion is anger.
And again, what remains, even as late as 2020, 2021, 22, is Duane Davis's visceral anger at Tupac Shakur.
That's why he had on the tail. You know what I'm saying? They was wrong. My nephew never jumped on me. They jumped on my nephew. My nephew didn't throw a punch, man. Wrong, man. Jumped on me.
28 years later, that is the visceral anger that Duane Davis had for Tupac Shakur. It did it in 2.5 hours. He took care of what he thought was the proper response. And 28 years later, he still is angry about what Tupac did. On September 7th, 1996, Tupac Shakur publicly, on camera, participated in a humiliating beating of Duane Davis's nephew, Orlando Anderson. And Duane Davis knew that in his world, that required a response. And over the years, in private interviews, in public statements, and even in private calls, Duane Davis has repeatedly told us over and over again about the anger he felt and his own role in the revenge drive-by shooting of Tupac Shakur. And now, nearly 30 years later, we're going to ask you to finally hold Duane Davis accountable.
The prosecution's case escalates from here. Witnesses testified to seeing the vehicles on the strip that night. One officer described arriving at the scene after the shooting and hearing Suge Knight, standing outside the wrecked car, say something like, "We'll take care of it." The officer had been trying to obtain information about the attackers, but Knight did not give him the name of the person responsible. Prosecutors can point to that exchange as another detail for the jury to consider. And then there's the gold chain. A witness was asked about a photograph showing a large gold chain around Tupac's neck. When asked whether Tupac was wearing that chain the second time the witness saw him, the answer was no. The transcript establishes that difference, but it does not establish what happened to the chain. So the detail remains a question rather than an answer.
Three themes here from the defense, as far as I could see, okay? One, there's no other evidence tying Keffe D to Tupac's killing. For example, the prosecution doesn't seem to have the murder weapon in this case. Two, sloppy investigation, not complete. And three, you can't trust what Keffe D said, that he made it all up.
LAPD reached out to him, called him up and said, "Hey, Detective Long, we have the gun. And we've tested it, and it matches back to what you're looking for in terms of the weapon that killed Tupac Shakur." Detective Long goes to LAPD, gets the gun, transports it back, gets tested, and it comes out as not a match. LAPD tells him after, we gave you a fake gun to test you out. What you will also learn is out of all those people in that room, not one person verifies what Keffe D tells them.
There's also the defense's criticism of the grand jury investigation. According to the defense, retired Las Vegas detective Clifford Mock, read pages from Davis's book into the grand jury record without documenting independent verification of the material. The defense argued that he never wrote a report during the period it was investigating the case. That is part of the defense's broader argument that investigators failed to verify Davis's story properly.
Keffe was never charged for any of what he said during that time period. And it's because they knew he was full of crap. Otherwise they would have. Why wouldn't they? When Detective Long comes back to Las Vegas, he goes and he talks it over with the Clark County District Attorney's Office. You know what happened then? They didn't charge the case either. In 2009.
Meanwhile, the prosecution is asking the jury to look at the consistency of Davis's statements over time, from the 2008 task force interview to the 2009 police interview, the 2017 B appearance, and the 2019 book. Prosecutors say the same basic story keeps coming back. Davis was angry about the attack on his nephew. He was in Las Vegas. He obtained the gun. He was in the white Cadillac. And he handed the gun to the shooters. Nearly 30 years of theories, documentaries, and investigations. And it comes down to this, a jury in a Las Vegas courtroom, weighing a man's own words against the absence of the murder weapon, disputed details, and questions about the investigation.
This trial. Okay, Gary Dale worked for the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. He was working on a bike team the night that Tupac was killed. Claimed that before the shooting, earlier in the night, he stops this black BMW that he claims had no license plates, and he says was occupied by Suge Knight and Tupac Shakur. But this is the key moment. Listen to this account of what happened after the shooting, and I will tell you, it is chilling to hear and legally potentially important for the prosecution.
Fast forward about, I'd say 10 minutes later, something unusual happened. What happened?
We were continuing riding on the strip area. We were heading southbound on the boulevard, and we heard some calls come out about a vehicle. Can't remember exactly what was said, but heading up towards Harmon, we saw the vehicle that had been described in the median of the road. It looked like it had ran up on the median and was stopped there in the middle of the boulevard.
What do you do when you see that?
We approached the vehicle.
Is it you and Mr. Goldgart? Or Officer
Yes,
Goldgart?
Officer Goldgart and I.
And do you see either of the two people that you saw earlier in the vehicle?
Yes.
And who is that?
Marion Knight was outside of the vehicle, walking around, talking, and Tupac Shakur was being removed by EMS people.
As Marion Knight is talking, do you recall anything he's saying?
He was telling us to take care of Tupac Shakur.
Are you able to have any sort of communication with Mr. Shakur?
He was still talking, and I was trying to convince him to tell me the name of whoever his assailants were.
And did he ever respond?
Yes, he responded, no, we'll take care of it. So, something like that.
No, we'll take care of it.
We'll take care of it, something like that.
Talk about that large gold chain we see in that photograph right there. The second time you came across Mr. Shakur, was he wearing that gold chain that's around his neck?
No.
So the thing that came into my mind, did Tupac Shakur seemingly know who did this to him? And if there's a continuation of events here, Orlando Anderson, and then this is retaliation, you can see why this might be pivotal for the prosecution.
So tell me, do you believe a defendant's repeated statements and memoir can prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt? Or does the missing weapon, conflicting accounts, and years of investigative questions leave you with real doubt? Put your answer in the comments. And stay close, because next time we're breaking down the testimony that could challenge the story Davis has told over the years.